Aloha, you're listening to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board on the Locked On Podcast Network. My guest today from The Athletic, Tony Jones. Aloha, Tony.
Do I say aloha or do I just say hello?
You get to say whatever you want, man.
How are you?
All right. We are in the NBA Big Board Locked On Podcast, streaming live on YouTube. Let's start the show.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, there it is, the big opening to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board podcast. We are now roughly 1 day away from the NBA draft. We're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon with lots of stuff happening. It's always risky because we're going to talk about some sort of current events happening. It's always risky this time of year to record a pod like this because lots of stuff happening, trades going down, everything else. But we want to break down what's happening around the draft right now with about a day to go. And Tony, let's start with the fact that Cade Cunningham's been number one. My big board, your big board, most teams in the league big board all year. However, I did say right before the draft, the Pistons love Jalen Green. And you can see why. Probably the sexiest prospect in this draft, an elite scorer, would add athleticism to that roster, what have you. Detroit gets the number one pick. And I posited in that mock draft, I think it's going to be Cade Cunningham, but maybe it's Jalen Green. Then all these signals come out of Detroit. No, Cade Cunningham, don't panic. Jaylen Green goes in for a workout in Detroit over the weekend. Wows Detroit brass. Mark Stein reporting today that it was so impressive that it's giving the Pistons pause about whether it's Cade Cunningham or Jalen Green, or maybe they take a trade to move down a spot or two in the draft. And so I'm going to start at the top here because you've been one of the biggest advocates for Cade Cunningham all year. Is it a mistake? Let's just assume for a minute that they're not trading. So this is just who they select at number one. Would it be a mistake for Detroit to take Jalen Green over Cade Cunningham?
So I say this, I preface this with the thought that I think Jalen Green is a franchise pick. That being said, or a franchise type of player, like he's a potential franchise, he's a franchise talent. That being said, don't overthink this. The pick is Cade Cunningham. Go to the podium, submit to Adam Silver, put Cade Cunningham's name on a piece of paper. You know, Vontae Mack, no matter what, Cade Cunningham, no matter what. So that is the pick. That's the guy that should be the top pick. He's the guy that either you're going to ride or die with in this draft. If you're a number one pick, you're either going to get a franchise point guard for a decade, or you're going to miss trying to get a franchise point guard for a decade. Jalen Green plays at a less important position, which is the two guard spot. Cade Cunningham is got elite size for his position, an elite feel for the game. I don't think that Cade Cunningham is Luka in terms of a scorer, but his impact and the way he plays is kind of Luka-esque. And he's a guy that has the highest floor in the draft. I always say that even if Cade Cunningham misses, if he completely misses, you're getting a guy who's going to be a high-level starter for 10 years. And that's if he misses. So if he hits, you're getting a franchise for 10 years. So it is, for me, you just don't overthink it. And you just go and you pick Cade Cunningham and you give him the ball from day one.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Is this an overthink? Is this part of? I doubt it with Troy Weaver because I think that they have a very professional process there. I'm wondering what other factors are there, but the workout is intriguing to me. I've been on this rodeo for a long time. I've seen some incredible workouts. I've seen Darko Milicic shoot the lights out in front of the entire Pistons roster and wow people. I've seen Damian Lillard do great workouts. I've also seen prospects that, in all shapes and forms are out there dominating in workouts. It doesn't surprise me, first of all, that Jaylen Green would look great in a workout setting. You're talking about one of the 2 or 3 best athletes in the draft, a very driven prospect. He's got a chip on his shoulder right now. He's saying if he had not gone to the G League, he would be the clear number one. He thinks people are disrespecting him now. I can see it, him walking into a gym and just lighting it on fire. But it's a one-on-none workout. He's not playing against Cade Cunningham or in any sort of competitive basketball, first of all. That's the first thing that scares me. It is interesting that this year, more than any year that I've covered the draft, it seems like workouts are mattering more because of the limited scouting in-person availability that teams have had this year because of COVID-19. You cover the Jazz. The Jazz are a team that notoriously has, some workout stories that really shifted their thinking and got them players that they wanted, including their 2 All-Stars, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, right? That both of those players really sealed the deal with a terrific workout. Isn't that right?
Well, and that's the conundrum of the NBA pre-draft process, right? How do you balance the value of the workout with the value of the scout or the value of the film or the value of the combine measurements or the value of the combine scrimmages? And how much weight do you put towards all of that? The workout that you're talking about is Donovan Mitchell, which was so good for the Jazz that jobs were literally on the line in terms of keeping that workout secret. And, in the Jazz, they tried not to tip their hand, but, we all knew about draft day who the Jazz really wanted, and they were able to go and get Donovan Mitchell in that draft class. At the same time, if you look at somebody like a Cade Cunningham, I would expect Cade Cunningham to look better in a 5-on-5 setting. And if you look at somebody like a Jalen Green, just like you said, I would expect Jalen Green to wow on a workout. That's not to say that he's not going to look good in a 5-on-5 setting, because I obviously expect him to look really good as an NBA player. The thing with Cade Cunningham for me is, you just trust the years of watching him. He's been pretty much the top player in the class from the time he was 15 or 16 years old. He was arguably the top player in college basketball in his one season. And when I look back at that Oklahoma State team, what Cade was able to accomplish was even more impressive to me. He was playing with ball dominant guards. He was playing with not a lot of spacing. He was playing with, to me, not a lot of offensive imagination from a coaching standpoint. I think if you put him in spacing, you give him a bunch of pick and rolls, you give him a bunch of dynamic wings, which is the one thing that the Pistons have, he's going to look really, really good at the NBA level. So, you need, if you're the Pistons, you need a guy who's going to be a tone setter. You need a guy who's going to be a leader. You need a guy who's going to run your offense and run it at a super high level, because that's what the NBA is about. And I think that Cade checks all of those boxes. So for me, even if Jalen Green came in and was Superman in his workout, it wouldn't deter me, in my opinion, one bit. I'd still be going up to that podium and plopping down Cade Cunningham's name.
I'm more agnostic, Tony. Cade Cunningham's number 1 on my board. He's going to end the season number 1 on my board. I think he's the most. If Detroit keeps the pick, he should be the favorite. But I don't see the same gap that others are seeing between him and Evan Mobley specifically, and even Jalen Green. And look, Jalen Green did finish at the top of his high school class, at least in the ESPN rankings. Not Cade Cunningham. I think that they all have ceilings to be superstars. Cade has a superstar ceiling. Evan Mobley does. Jalen Green does as well. I agree with you that Cade's floor is higher, which is one of the attractive things about Cade. But I could also argue that without that elite athleticism, that maybe Evan and Jalen's ceiling is a little bit higher if they hit. And so I'm okay with this. If this is Troy Weaver, I like the non-group think, and I do think, as good as Cade is, and again, he's number one on my board, I think there has been some group think that's got into this with Cade Cunningham a little bit. I don't think it's as clear-cut as people have made it out to be. I'm sure Troy Weaver will get killed on draft night if he selects Jalen Green 1, but I don't know that at the end of the day he's not going to look really smart. Because Jalen Green's a player. And frankly, for me, I like it just with the current roster. And again, I would not draft on need, but I'm just saying with the current roster, I like Jalen Green's fit the best in Detroit. I like it better than Jalen Green in Houston. I like it better than Jalen Green in Cleveland. I think that there's an argument to be made there. But let's pivot to the other argument, which is that Troy Weaver's doing Oklahoma City type stuff. Right now, which is he's thinking about assets, he's thinking about maximizing assets, and that this isn't Jalen Green at 1. This is thinking about how do I continue to get assets to build my roster. And so let's talk about a couple of trade scenarios that are out there right now. We've been waiting for what we called the Godfather deal. Like what team is going to push all the chips onto the table and say this is what we'll give for the number 1 pick. I believe, based off of reports, that he probably got it. Maybe there's a better deal out there that I'm not thinking of, but Oklahoma City reportedly offers Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the number 6 pick in the draft for Cade. They've offered a young, big combo guard all-star, right? And so you're getting a proven player in Shai, and you're still at a point in the draft that whether that's Kuminga or Scotty Barnes that's there or whatever, you're getting a very high level prospect as well. Again, I know you're captain of the Cade Cunningham fan club. So you're Troy Weaver. I'm Sam Presti. I push Shai out. I push the number 6 pick in the draft to you. What do you say to me?
I say no.
Do you even think about it, Tony? I mean, is it really that fast to know? Is it that bad a deal, or does that at least intrigue you?
I'm saying no because for a couple of reasons. A, I think, and I know that I'm playing Troy Weaver, but as Tony Jones, I think that Cade Cunningham is a franchise, or he has a chance to be a franchise. So for that thought alone, I'm keeping Cade Cunningham. Secondly, you're thinking cap ahead, and right now, if you take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got to pay him next year, and that takes away basically 3 years of having a guy that's on a rookie deal that could be a franchise. Cade Cunningham, I think, can come in and be rookie of the year, be, a high level player from day one. So you're thinking 4 years at least of high level play under, relatively cheap circumstances. So you don't want to. Now
you're thinking like Sam Presti.
Listen, listen, Lester Freeman from The Wire said all the pieces matter. That is what he said. So all the pieces matter. And if and this is a team building thing, right? Like if you take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got to pay him $100 million in short order. If you take Cade Cunningham, you're probably not going to get Shai Gilgeous SGA level production in year 1 or year 2, but you're going to get something, in the ballpark. You're going to get 17 and 7 and 5, or you're going to get, rookie of the year numbers, and you have him in year one, you have Sadiq Bey in year two, you have Killian Hayes in year two, you have all of these cheap contracts. Your only really expensive contract right now is Jeremy Grant. You're trying to build a team. You're trying, in the next 4 years, you're trying to go and convince a free agent to come and play with Cade Cunningham while he is on his rookie deal. And so, for me, just because of that, for that reason alone, I'm saying no. But
is there any deal that you would accept at this point for the number one pick? Your Troy Weaver, right. that doesn't do it. And by the way, the reports were that Detroit turned that deal down. And so now you're Troy Weaver. Is there any deal that you accept from Oklahoma City or anyone else for Cade Cunningham and the number one pick in the draft?
Okay, let's say if Oklahoma City said, we'll give you SGA, we'll give you number 6 this year, and we'll give you our first round pick next year, which means that possibly you're coming away with Chet Holmgren.
Okay.
What
so you get the 6th pick in this year's draft. Yes. You get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's a young all-star, and you get whatever Oklahoma City's pick is
next year.
No protection on it? No protection.
No protection. Also, they throw in Lou Dort.
Oh, and Lou Dort. Okay.
Yes, let's throw in Lou Dort as well.
All right. So that's what it would take to pry him out of Tony Jones's hand. And Tony, I think you make some really great arguments for people that are saying, isn't the Shai is a proven player, and it's not like the 6th player in this draft is a scrub. Why doesn't Detroit do that? I think that the contract ramifications of it are very real, and also explain why you're going to see Sam Presti thinking about doing this deal, because he also has to pay him next year, and it starts to mess with Oklahoma City's cap flexibility as well, with the rest of the team
$100 million.
Yeah. And the rest of the team isn't on that trajectory right now.
Right. Exactly.
Though I will have to say that, look, at some point, Sam Presti has got to quit collecting assets and start building a team. And, I was joking with David Thorpe on the last podcast, maybe he needs to check into Assets Anonymous at some point, because there is always this sort of thinking, assets. And, you're trading away Shai. I think a lot of people were really surprised to see Shai on the move here. It's not like he's a 25-year-old or 26. The dude's 22 years old.
Yeah, but like you said, he's got to be paid next year, right? Yeah. And that kind of screws up your cap a little bit when you got to pay somebody. And, the timeline is not there. And, and the big thing is the timeline for, that guy, that superstar, the one that you push all of your chips in, is not there. Who's the best superstar that's potentially on the market right now? We're talking about Bradley Beal this year. Okay, so is it worth accumulating all your assets and pushing all of your chips into the middle of the table to try to acquire Bradley Beal? Probably not.
Yeah.
But next year, when somebody else is on the market, that's probably, younger, a little bit more dynamic or as dynamic, or the year after, then it's probably time. What Sam Presti's trying to do right now is buy himself 2 years, because he knows he's going to have, a top 5 pick, and he hopes that he has a number 1 pick next year. And, you're getting Chet Holmgren, or if you get a top 2 pick, you're getting Chet Holmgren or Jalen Duren. All right. I'm sorry, Jalen Duren is the year after. But you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
I want to keep talking about Oklahoma City for a minute, because if Detroit says no, that may not be their only option to move up in the draft. But before we do that, I want to talk about Built Bar. Built Bar has 9 delicious flavors, including the occasional limited time flavor. When you talk to Built Bar fans, they're definitely passionate about their faves. There's coconut almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel. I'm a big coconut guy myself. They taste like a Mounds bar. They're chewy. They're not dry at all, like typically you think about protein bars. There's really something for everyone. And if you don't know what kind of flavor you want, you can get a mix box where you get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. And here's the thing that I think is so amazing about Built Bars. They are actually delicious. They taste great and they're healthy too. They have 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 grams of net carbs. Order today and get that raspberry or mint brownie or whatever you like. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. And I'm back with Tony Jones of The Athletic. I'm Chad Ford. You can read my stuff over at NBABigBoard.com. Also, just a shout out to Built Bar, who is going to be sponsoring live draft coverage from myself, along with Rafael Barlow of Draft Junkies, as we break down every pick in the draft. It's going to be live streamed on YouTube. We're going to be in TV studios here in Dallas. It's going to be really high level production. All of our Locked On hosts are going to join us to get reaction from each of their teams. So if you want some alternative draft stuff and you're thinking, hey, let's follow Chad live in the draft, do that over at the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. And that starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on that Locked On YouTube channel. Really excited to be covering the draft live this year and really appreciate Locked On for making this possible. Tony, I want to talk to you about one other potential idea for Oklahoma City. Detroit says no. What about Shai and maybe 16, maybe even possibly 18, straight up for the number 3 pick in the draft for Cleveland? Cleveland's on a little bit different timetable than Detroit. They're on a little bit different timetable than Houston right now. Does adding Shai, is that, and then getting a couple of mid-first round picks, does that equal the number 3 pick in the draft in your mind? Because it starts to jumpstart that team who's getting, I think, a little bit more anxious to start to being a playoff contender, but still getting a young, all-star in return, and then maybe moving Colin Sexton, somewhere else and getting some sort of asset there. Do you like that deal for Cleveland?
I would say no if I were Cleveland.
Okay. And that's just because you think Evan Mobley's better, or again, is it the cap ramifications?
No, it wouldn't be the cap ramifications with this one. This would be a fit ramification. I want the ball in Darius Garland's hands. And for SGA to be maximized, the ball needs to be in his hands. It's one of the reasons why, for me, one of the reasons why Colin Sexton is probably expendable, because Darius Garland is that good with the ball in his hands that he probably commands the ball in his hands on a full-time basis. So what you're looking for if you're Cleveland is you want a bunch of 6 foot, you want a bunch of Isaac Okoros, and you want one secondary guy who can create. And Shai's a primary, and for me, I think that fit is just a little bit wonky. Now, the second reason is Evan Mobley. I think Evan Mobley is, listen, the scout that you talked to that said that he was Chris Bosh and, AD defensively, that will probably equal the best power forward in the history of the game. So maybe that's a little aggressive. At the same time, Evan Mobley is a franchise. We talked about this in our last pod. Evan Mobley's a tier 1. Jalen Green is a tier 1. Cade Cunningham is a tier 1. So I'm not trading out of a tier 1 prospect that I can get, especially as a big, especially as a guy, like Evan Mobley, who I think can hold up so well defensively in today's NBA. So for those reasons, I would say no if I were Cleveland.
Okay, I'm going to spitball one more at you, because Sam Presti is relentless. He is going to keep working the phones. No matter how many times he hears no, he's going to keep working the phones. So now I'm going to talk about a 3-way deal. And you just react as if you're Cleveland, then I'll ask you to react if you're Toronto. Jared Allen, Darius Garland go to Toronto. The 4th pick goes back to Cleveland. Shai goes to Cleveland, and Cleveland sends the 4th pick back to Oklahoma City. So Oklahoma City has 4 and 6 now. Cleveland has 3 and Shai. And Toronto trades the 4th pick in the draft for Garland and Jared Allen. So let's just start from Cleveland. So now you're building a franchise around Evan Mobley and Shai, and then with some pieces around them. Do you like that deal? Because I know you're a Darius Garland guy. Are you a Garland guy over Shai, or is it Shai over Garland in your opinion?
So I'm still getting Evan Mobley with the 3rd pick.
You're getting Evan Mobley and Shai, but you're losing Garland and Jared Allen.
I would probably think about doing that if I were Cleveland.
Because you would rank Shai ahead of Darius Garland, which I think a lot of people would, if nothing else, just because of the size difference between the two.
Yeah. Now the question is, what are you building around Shai? Because now you've given up Darius Garland, and you've given up Jared Allen. So you're paying it's sort of like it's sort of in the same you're in the same range as Detroit, which is you have a $100 million player on a roster and you're still a 25-win team.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the end of the day, I'm probably still saying no, but I'm definitely giving it a lot more thought than I'm giving Shai and pick 16 and 18.
All right, let's talk about it from Toronto's perspective. They're being rumored to also being active at looking at trading this pick. Is Darius Garland and Jared Allen worth the 4th pick in this draft?
I would say no, because obviously Fred VanVleet, but I really, really like Malachi Flynn, and obviously Gary Trent Jr. is there, and I don't like Darius Garland over Jalen Suggs. Simply is I think Jalen Suggs, I had him as a tier 1. So I think Jalen Suggs is going to be really, really good.
So essentially you've closed off every door that Sam Presti has to get up here into the top 4. And at that point, if he can't get in the top 4, it probably doesn't make sense to him to swap and give up a major asset to move up 1 pick in the draft with Orlando.
We haven't done anything with Houston yet, though, have we?
All right. Do you got a Houston proposal for Oklahoma City?
Do you have a Houston proposal for Oklahoma City? SGA and 6 for 2.
Okay, so you turned this deal down for Cleveland, but you would do this deal for the Rockets. Why?
Christian Wood is on his 2nd contract. They're more ready to win now.
Okay, and so you get Shai and Christian Wood. Where does Shai and Christian Wood, though? Because now you're giving up the number 2 pick in the draft for this, and you're getting the 6th pick in the draft. So whoever that is,
right.
Kuminga
Scotty
or whatever.
Barnes. Right.
Or Scotty Barnes. It's probably Kuminga or Scotty Barnes. But probably more likely Kuminga than Barnes. So let's say it's Shai, Scotty Barnes, Christian Wood. Isn't that team in the West still miles away from being a playoff contender? And now you're paying 2 guys without really a star?
That is probably true. So you probably, you have to weigh that if you're Raphael, and you have to weigh that if you're Sam Presti. I think you have to weigh if you're Sam Presti, do you want to trade SGA to a Western Conference team, to where you're going to see that team at least 3 times a year? So that's also something that you have to weigh as well. But Houston's style is probably a lot more conducive to SGA and Kevin Porter having the basketball in their hands and just kind of switching off and just going to get buckets. So there's that. But, I'm probably saying no if I'm Houston, because, it's kind of the same thing. Jaylen Green is a rookie. KPJ is who has turned out to be, we all knew how talented he was. He's just got to kind of, be mentally there. Let's just put it that way. you know, and if he is, then KPJ is a dynamic talent. I love Jalen Green for the Rockets. Like I love the potential of Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green in the same backcourt. Like I think they could be in time if they keep those two together. I think that they could be just lethal and dynamic.
So interesting, all of these permutations. If somehow Sam Presti got up to number 2, I could see him then threatening to take Evan Mobley, who I think Cleveland may prefer, over Jalen Green at 3, and then extracting some sort of asset out of Cleveland to swap spots. It might also be the place where he could get up to 1 then. If he's up at 2 and Detroit's at 1, he does have a stockpile of future picks. He has some other interesting prospects on his roster or whatever. Maybe at 2, then he pries the pick away from Detroit. If he moves up to 2 or 3, my gut tells me he won't be done there. That won't be the end of what Sam Presti's trying to do. I think Oklahoma City is by far the most fascinating team to watch in all of this, and whether they can actually get it done or not is really tough when you have this strong draft at the top. And as Tony's pointing out, maybe these guys that he's offering, they're just, whether it's in 2022 or whether it's, Shai, they just don't have the ceilings of the Evan Mobleys and Jalen Greens, Cade Cunninghams, and in Tony's estimation, maybe even Jalen Suggs's of this draft. And so this just may be the case that Oklahoma City's stuck. But from everybody that I'm talking to in the league, Sam Presti is burning up the phones right now trying to make something happen. So we're going to watch that closely as we get closer to the draft. When Tony and I come back, we're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors, who are another team that I think are everybody's focusing on what happens in the draft. And we'll talk about a few other teams that might be trade options for them as we get in the last couple of days before the draft. He's Tony Jones of The Athletic. I'm Chad Ford from Chad Ford's NBA Big Board. You can go check out my stuff at NBABigBoard.com. Let's talk about Rock Auto, because this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain and auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure almost pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on your computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more than the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? They have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. And I'm back with Tony Jones of The Athletic. He's been joining us on the podcast all year. Really appreciate his insights. Really knows his stuff, not just about the NBA, but the NBA draft as well. And getting able to combine those strengths with Tony today as we look at some trade options and some trade rumors that are out there right now. So we've talked a lot about the top of the draft, and then we get to 7, Tony. And this is where, to me, the draft becomes really complicated, because Golden State has the 7th and 14th pick in the draft. They are in win now mode. They are in not like playoff now mode. They're in championship type mode right now. 7 and 14 have an interesting, you could go get some older prospects, Davian Mitchell, Corey Kispert, Chris Duarte, what have you, try to have those guys come help you right now. You could say, no, we're building for the future, and I'm going to go get, a Josh Giddey or James Bouknight or something else. I'm not going to worry so much about how they play right now, but I'm going to build them along with James Wiseman. Or you take all of this stuff together and maybe James Wiseman, you package it together, you make a deal. I think that's where Golden State is leaning, but I think they're having a hard time getting the type of player that I think they need to get to be willing to move Wiseman 7 and 14 right now. And just based off of what I'm seeing and talking both internally to the Warriors, as well as sort of what you're seeing on the face, the workouts that they've been going through or whatever, it looks like they're rolling into this draft with the assumption now that they're going to keep 7 and 14. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, but we'll do one answer at a time. First of all, do you think that Golden State should trade Wiseman 7 and 14, and frankly, it's probably going to be Andrew Wiggins as well, just so that they can bring in another, young all-star. If that deal's out there, whether that's Ben Simmons or whether that's Bradley Beal, or maybe it's even someone like Paskal Siakam, do you do that deal if you're Golden State?
I mean, you probably do it if you're Golden State, but the problem is, why would another team take Wiggins? Because any team in the position where they're trading you back a star player, like if Washington is trading you back Bradley Beal, then they don't want him. They're trying to trade Russell Westbrook and clear their books. So why are you taking on $28 million of salary?
Well, you're getting Wiseman and 2 more lottery picks. And I think some of that is that you're taking back Wiggins, and Wiggins not an untradeable contract, though. I mean, he's not like he's a scrub in the league. He's
not a scrub, but I think that at this point his contract is long term, and if there's two, and I'm just keeping this Washington specific, there are a couple of things that would give me pause if I'm Tommy Sheppard. If I'm taking back Wiggins, then I'm getting in the way of Denny, and I'm getting in the way of Roy Hachimura. And both of those guys, Roy's in his 3rd year, Denny's going into his 2nd year. They have a chance to be a dynamic wing combo. They have a chance to be really good together. I'm not getting in the way of those guys. I'm not bringing Andrew Wiggins in to get in the way of those guys. Number 2, if I'm Tommy Sheppard, I already have Daniel Gafford. He's probably at least right now 75 to 80% of James Wiseman, and he's going to be a lot cheaper long term. And I'm getting back Thomas Bryant. So where do how do I play Wiseman when Gafford when A, you're getting back Thomas Bryant, and Thomas Bryant is really good, and B, Daniel Gafford, as we saw towards the end of the regular season and the playoffs, he can actually play. So, I mean, maybe Daniel Gafford's probably not enough to stand in the way of James Wiseman, but maybe he is. So that's number 2. So if I'm Tommy Sheppard, you have the assets that you're getting are 7 and 14, right? So the question I have to ask if I'm Tommy Sheppard is, essentially, is Bradley Beal worth trading to Golden State to get back 7 and 14? Am I getting a game changer at 7? You're probably not getting 1 and 14, but can you get 1 and 7? So then, if you're Tommy Sheppard, then you're basically in Sam Presti's position. You make the trade lines trying to get up into the top 5 or the top 4. So there's a lot of nuance that has to be there, and like I said, I mean it's the same thing, where if you're trading Beal, then essentially you're starting over. That means you got to get rid of Russ. That means you got to find a taker for Davis Bertans, and you got to shed salary, and you got to start all over, and then you got to go into asset accumulation mode, and you have to develop Denny, and you have to develop Roy Hachimura. But it's harder to do that if you're taking back Andrew Wiggins and you're taking back that contract on multiple levels. So to me, that's the battle that Golden State is fighting as they try to package those picks.
So let's say that Bradley Beal's a no, Damian Lillard's a no, and Ben Simmons probably a no. I mean, I don't think Philadelphia is looking for that package back. I think they would have to get a 3rd team involved that would get Philly back, who they want. So let's go to Toronto for a minute. If you're Masai, do you tear this team down? Kyle Lowry probably leaving via free agency anyway. Is this the type of move that makes sense for Toronto? Because they could keep 4, they get 7, 14 Wiseman, they send off Siakam. Maybe there's a few other pieces that go to Golden State as well to sort of make that work. And one, does that make sense for you in Toronto right now? Because you've built a team that's solid. Maybe if everybody's healthy, they're a playoff team, but this is not a championship contender anymore. They really haven't been since they lost Kawhi. And you just really start to get from the ground up and say, Wiseman, 4, 7, we're gonna collect all these assets. Well, maybe I'll try to package them together to move up, get future assets, who knows? One, does that make sense for Toronto? And then two, would Siakam be enough in Golden State to say we're going to trade all this out? And by the way, Andrew Wiggins, Canadian, you have to take the money back, but he is from Canada, and maybe there's something there that they can make out of it over the next couple of years.
So it's they're the same questions, right? I think it makes a little bit more sense for Toronto than it does for Washington. But if you're trading Paskal Siakam, what are you doing with Fred VanVleet, right? And you're paying him long term. You're paying him $100 million. So if you do this deal, if you're Masai, then you're in a sense. I mean, you're trying to build on the fly, but you're taking salary back, and you're still going to be over the cap. You're still taking $25 million back. And that's the whole problem. Andrew Wiggins is getting paid like a near max guy, and he's not a max guy. He's a starter. That's what he is. So, it makes a little bit more sense for me for Toronto, because you can still get Suggs and you can still get Kuminga at 7, because we both think Kuminga is going to be there at 7. And you might be able to get somebody really good at 14, but now you're on the clock to develop these 3 picks in 4 years to get them to a point where they can win, and you still can't build around them the way you normally build around a young team, because you're paying Andrew Wiggins $25 million a year. So, to me, that's just what Golden State's fighting. Like, they have to include Wiggins in any of those picks. And Siakam would be great for Golden State. I like Siakam for Golden State better than I like Beal for Golden State, because Siakam's a lot more of what they need. Beal is kind of like an embarrassment of riches for them. Obviously that's just another dynamic ball in hand guard, but Siakam is, to me, in my estimation, more of what they actually need.
I think this is a fascinating one for me. I actually like this move for the Raptors for a couple of reasons. One, a core of Wiseman, let's say it's Jalen, Suggs, and Kuminga. That's not a bad young core to start to build around. And keeping Fred VanVleet and Andrew Wiggins on the roster means that maybe you don't have to have an unbearable team to watch. First of all, they're not going to be the 76ers where they're winning 11 games this season. And by the time those young guys are developed, Wiggins and VanVleet are either in the last years of their deal or they're off the books, and all of a sudden now you've got a ton of money in free agency to go get whoever else you want to add to that mix. And probably VanVleet you could actually trade now. I actually think there's probably a market for Fred VanVleet.
I agree with you.
If Kyle Lowry is going to get $30 million a year, there's a team out there that would make a deal for Fred VanVleet.
I agree with you there. I'm a huge Fred VanVleet fan. I think he's really, really good.
So if you don't want him there and you need to get a little bit more cap space, I think it's there. I think that might be the right decision for Toronto. And like you, Siakam, to me, I get why Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal are attractive to Golden State. I get it. But to me, from a basketball perspective, I've always thought Siakam, and even to a certain extent Ben Simmons, made more sense to what would fill out their roster in a more intriguing way for me. And so that's the deal that I see that I think makes the most sense. It's not the big name of Lillard or Beal or even Ben Simmons, but Paskal Siakam there. Interesting choices to make for Masai there. let's say for a minute that they can't get a deal done. You seem pretty pessimistic that they're going to be able to make that deal. And I think that that's some of the vibes that I'm getting out of Golden State right now are the same, that right now there's just nothing cooking that gives them any optimism that this deal can get done. Now, out of fairness, by the time this podcast runs tomorrow, they could be traded. Things do heat up in the last day. You typically don't get your best offers until the Wednesday of the draft, and so there's a caveat there. But let's talk about what you would do if you're Golden State at 7 and 14. Then, if you're keeping these picks, who would be your picks at 7 and 14 for Golden State?
If Kuminga's there, I'm probably taking Kuminga. If Kuminga's not there, if I'm Golden State, I'm taking Josh Giddey.
Okay,
at 7. And at 14, I'm praying that Davion Mitchell falls to 14.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because I like this in some ways, because what Tony's doing here is kind of splitting the difference, right? He's using 7 on a high upside player that probably doesn't do much to help you. I don't think Josh Giddey or Jonathan Kuminga can really get many minutes next year for Golden State, but you're developing and you're thinking young core with James Wiseman down the road, and you're thinking about sustainability. And then at 14, you're taking a guy, Mitchell, who will be able to play for the Warriors next year and bring something defensively. That's a really intriguing way to do it. I think the other way, if you're really ballsy, if you're Golden State, is even at 14, you take a Zaire Williams or something else and you swing twice and say, we're going to handle this in free agency. I do think it's going to be tough for them at 14 to pass on Davion Mitchell. From what I heard, he came back in for a second workout at Golden State, tore it up in the workout. And if Steve Kerr is cheering loudly for Davion Mitchell, now whether the front office listens to the coach, a lot of times I think fans are surprised. Coaches don't have a lot of say often in what sort of happens in the draft. Maybe Steve has a little bit more juice than some coaches out there, but that will be really interesting to see what they do. Book night, do you like book night at all instead of Giddey and Kuminga at 7?
Well, the thing about it is I'm hearing Brook Knight's getting a lot of traction towards the top of the draft, right? Like,
well, this is 7. I'm talking about at 7. So
yeah,
Brook Knight doesn't go. It doesn't go higher than 6. Right?
I really, the thing I love about Brook Knight, I love his athleticism. Like, the athleticism it jumps off the page at you, and I think the ease of his shot jumps off at me in his film. He shoots a really easy basketball, and I think he needs to add. I think he needs to add some significant strength. I don't think. I think he needs to prove that he can shoot it consistently. But I think he's potentially a dynamic offensive player, and he's a guy that you can put the ball in his hands, and he can get some things done for you off the bounce, in ISO, and in pick and roll. So for those reasons, I mean, that's guys that get buckets like that is a really valued skill in the NBA. So I do like him.
Yeah, I think he's an intriguing fit in that he's probably one of the more NBA ready prospects in the draft, but he's still young. You're not, cashing in this on a 23 or 24-year-old here at 7. You're talking about a 21-year-old but could probably earn some minutes on even the Warriors coming off the bench, and maybe like a Jordan Clarkson, type role for him coming off the bench. All right, Tony, we're really about a day away from the draft here. Any other major trades that you're looking at right now? Any other team that either you're hearing or you just think they should make their big move right now in the draft?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the team that I cover. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. What are you doing?
I thought you were going to say the Knicks, but okay.
I don't cover the Knicks.
Yeah. No, but your heart is in New York.
My heart is definitely in New York. Chris Duarte, please fall to 19. Okay. If you're the Utah Jazz, what are you doing? What are you doing, Chad?
I don't think the guy is there at 30. If we're just talking about the draft for a minute, that's going to help them. They're going to spend a ton of money on Mike Conley. I think that you punt this draft, get a future asset out of it, and then you've got some young players on their roster already that you're still kind of trying to develop, including last year's first round pick and last year's second round pick, Elijah Hughes. And so punt this draft if I'm Utah. I know that's not a sexy thing. I know that's what fans hate to hear that, but I think you punt, pick up a future asset, and use whatever cap flexibility or whatever you get out of that to help the team down the road with the fact that they're going to have to pay Mike Conley a lot of money. I think the question I want to ask you back, you can answer the draft too, is do you trade Joe Ingles? Because it seems like there's some smoke out there that maybe Ingles might be, someone that the Jazz may offer up to try to change at least somewhat the parameters of this team.
Well, if you're going to trade Joe Ingles, then you have to trade him with the 30 pick, in my opinion. And if you're trading Joe Ingles, the reason why I say you have to trade him with the 30 pick is because if you're trading Joe Ingles, you're trading him for a guy that you got to, and that can help win a championship right now. So, so if you're Boston, do you take Joe Ingles and number 30 for Marcus Smart?
If you're Boston?
If you're Boston.
No, I can't believe that Brad Stevens is going to ever trade away Marcus Smart. Okay. I think he thinks he's too valuable for him there. And now that Brad Stevens, was the coach, and now that Danny Ainge would have done it. Danny Ainge would have ripped Brad Stevens' heart out and done it. But now that Brad Stevens is running the show, I don't see it happening now.
If you're the Lakers, do you trade Kuzma and 22 for Joe Ingles and 30, or for just Joe Ingles straight up?
Yeah, because I think the Lakers have to do something. I think that the issue for the Lakers is I'm not sure I'm ready to make that trade on draft night until I see what else I can get out there. Obviously, you hear the rumblings that they're looking at Russell Westbrook. I don't know actually how they make a Russell Westbrook deal. Frankly, I'm not sure. I don't know how that math works.
Because why if Tommy Shepard is trading, this is for all the Laker fans that were in my mentions. The question that you have to ask yourself as a Laker fan, if you're Tommy Shepard and the only reason you're trading Russell Westbrook is because you've already traded Bradley Beal, correct? So
right.
If you're Tommy Shepard, why are you taking back $25 million in salary that is Dennis Schroeder and a sign and trade? Because it would have to be a sign and trade with Schroeder.
Yeah, that's the only way it makes sense. Sense financially is for Schroeder and a sign and trade and an overpriced deal.
And why in the world, if you're Tommy Shepard, would you take back Dennis Schroeder?
Yeah.
In that sign and trade deal. So I don't know that there's a Russell Westbrook trade out there for the Lakers.
Yeah, this is tough. I agree. I see why the Lakers would want Russell Westbrook. I even see why the Wizards might want off Russell Westbrook. It's just that it just doesn't financially make sense to make a deal happen there. So I think that's really interesting. So that maybe that's what they're stuck with. But I will say, the go from Russell Westbrook to Joe Ingles is a pretty huge wake up call for for Lakers fans. And that's not dogging Joe Ingles, who was a legitimate sixth man of the year candidate this year, as well, and could certainly help in LA. Would you do that deal if you were Utah?
I would do that deal if I were Utah, if Chris Duarte were still on the board.
Is he the only guy that could be there? Because now you're talking about the 22 pick of the draft. Is there anybody else that you would say other than Duarte? I would do
that deal if Trey Murphy were on the board.
Okay. Anybody else? Usman Garuba on the board.
Probably would not if I were Utah, because Usman right now is a 5.
Okay.
So in a vacuum, I would probably do the deal, but for a fit, you're probably doing that deal for Usman to play 10 minutes a night. So,
okay.
I'm trying to think of if there's anybody else. If Moses Moody is on the board at 22,
I don't see that.
I would do it, but I don't see that.
What if Kai Jones is on the board? And forget about whether the guy plays or not, you just see this opportunity to have what everybody's been clamoring, this elite athletic, guy that can defend multiple positions, which I think Kai could. Do you swing for the fences and just take Kai Jones and say we're going to develop him down the road?
Yeah, but Rudy's still 29 years old, so
yeah. But I don't think Kai's a 5, and I personally don't think Kai's a 5 in the NBA.
If you can prove to me that he can play the 4, maybe.
Okay.
That is intriguing though, because Kai, his athleticism is ridiculous.
And it's not just the bouncy part that we typically think about. It's the lateral part. It's the lateral quickness. He moves like a guard. Yeah. And so in a league where if Rudy has a weakness, right, it's that sort of lateral, that lateral speed and being able to get out and guard guys on the perimeter like that. Kai Jones, I think, can do that. Now
I agree with you.
He's not experienced enough to do it at a playoff level now. I mean, I'm not saying he could do that next year in the NBA, but that's the potential for him down the road.
So we're looking at Kai Jones as a more athletic Nick Claxton.
Yeah. Kai Jones is one of the most ridiculous athletes that I've ever seen for a player that size. Yeah. And again, it's not just because of the explosiveness. It's the lateral quickness and speed and the way and the fluidity with which he moves his body that just intrigues me to death, but also scares me because I'm not sure the basketball part is there yet. I don't think Kai will be there, by the way, but it's interesting to sort of throw these scenarios out there.
But here's the scenario.
Jazz fans should be excited about that. 22 is much better, in my opinion, in this draft than 30.
What if Corey Kispert is there?
Do you think the Knicks pass on Corey Kispert twice?
Tibbs don't like shooters.
Tibbs also likes guys that can play, and I think the Knicks could use some shooting.
Yeah.
And Kispert, for all the stereotypes, is not a terrible defender.
No, he's not.
He's not a guy that's just a massive liability on the defensive end. I think that there's stereotyping going on there. I don't think he's that. So I don't think Kispert gets past 19 and 21, where the Knicks are right now. But maybe if the Knicks trade those picks, Kispert could be there. Though Kispert's getting a long look at Indiana as well, and that's the other place that you've got to think about him. And you also got to think about him with the Pelicans now. The Pelicans are going to be obviously in win now mode. They're going to bring in, maybe if they can get the deal done, Kyle Lowry, and so Corey Kispert would also make a lot of sense with the Pelicans at 17.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're the Jazz, I mean, that 22nd pick, because the Jazz right now don't think that anybody at the 30 pick can help them next year, yeah. And I think that that's their conundrum right now. But there should be multiple guys at 22 that can help them next year. So.
All right. Well, Tony gives us a little vision of maybe what's to come later in the draft. A lot of talk about the Lakers trading. There's a juicy Jazz rumor for you. Tony, it's been so fun to talk about this whole draft with you all year. Can't wait to actually see what happens on draft night, and I'm sure we're going to get together soon and break it all down. Just really appreciate your time. If you haven't already checked out Tony at The Athletic, he does an incredible job over there. Amazing Jazz columnist, but knows so much about the NBA. Just grateful to have him on. Make sure you also check us out at NBABigBoard.com. We're in crunch time now. On Thursday, we are going to have our final mock draft of the year. It'll be updated live throughout the day as different things go down. It's going to be a super fun day. We're also doing a mock draft contest over at the website right now with lots of complimentary subscriptions on the line if you can beat me in your mock draft. And so everybody can put their mock drafts out there. If you get 15 or more mock drafts, I'll give you 15 out of 30. I'll give you a lifetime subscription to NBA Big Board, because that's a heck of a mock draft if you can get 15 out of the 30 picks correctly. And also just make sure you tune in live on draft night. Go to the Locked On NBA YouTube channel. I'm going to be there. Rafael Barlow's going to be there. John Corrales is going to be there. We're going to break down every pick in the draft as well as all of our Locked On hosts. That's on Locked On NBA YouTube channel. And Tony, can't wait to see what happens in the next 24 to 36 hours. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. It's already started.
Already starting. All right. You've been listening to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board on the Locked On Podcast Network. My podcast on Thursday will be going over my final mock draft. And so for those of you wondering what sort of happens on what I'm hearing and what's reporting, that'll all be covered in the podcast on Thursday. Until then, you're listening to Chad Ford's NBA Big Board on the Locked On Podcast Network. Aloha.